It's revealed that robotic hands have begun relentlessly fisting the ship until it can no longer handle the pressure and stops responding to controls. All of our party suits up in their EVAs to fight against this new threat, while the Orbital Knight watches her victim from afar and shows pity for what's about to happen to the unnamed characters. She unleashes the Doom Fists on the poor bastards, though the Titan squad tries to pew them down, but they're completely bulletproof, so no matter what they do, it always ends in them getting an unwanted hand job. The teacher goes towards the robot to try and help once again, but his crippling trauma prevents him from even moving a muscle. Meanwhile, the commander orders everyone to abandon ship, which leads to a hasty evacuation of all on board. The Orbital Knight decides to stop playing around, then launches lethal high fives to end our survivors' subscription to life. However, Inaho has begun to use explosive rounds in order to throw the master hands off course until he eventually runs out of ammo, and the Martian takes this chance to give them a fisting from the heavens. But when all seems lost, the projectile is suddenly deflected as clutch god Slaine arrives on the battlefield. All our survivors are surprised to see a Martian fighting on their side, though Inaho accepts it since they need all the help they can get. The Orbital Knight decides to lend the newcomer a hand before launching her massive fisters at the pilot in an attempt to forcefully open his back door, so Slaine does a barrel roll to avoid this horrific fate, but the arms continue to hunt him down until our MC steps in to start pewing them out of the sky and actually manages to damage the master hand. Inaho goes down to act as a shield for the survivors, then gives all of them a mild concussion as he deflects the Doom Fists heading their way, which crashes into a cliffside that conveniently reveals a big hole in the island. And the commander takes the chance to use the remainder of the vessel's power to vigorously thrust towards the only opening that leads to safety, while Inaho along with the Titan squad charges to face off against their enemy. Our allies intentionally bust all over the only opening to collapse the entrance of this mysterious cavern before smashing into a military base that none of the officers even knew was there. The army begins escorting all the survivors that are still alive deeper into the chamber, where the captain salutes the amphibious assault ship for its outstanding service, then bids it farewell for the last time. But while she's walking away, the soldiers come over to report something very interesting. Inside the cargo room, Salem blames herself for the war that has brought humanity to the brink of extinction, because if she didn't come down to Earth seeking peace, then the assassins couldn't have used her passing as an excuse to invade, and Ryet confirms that this is all her fault, as the officers hurry to pass them. The commander stands before a destroyed Gundam where the teacher joins them to explain that this Eva was the one who ended his squad's subscription to life, which makes everyone realize the military only covered up his report to keep their discovery on the battlefield a secret, and our survivors notice a Deus Ex Machina resting at the bottom of the facility. They enter the Deucalion to see if there is any way to bring the systems back online, but the soldiers quickly find the vessel to be useless to them since it's powered by an Aldnoah drive and no one has any idea how to activate it. However, Salem enters the room and gives Four Eyes a closer look at the floor for trying to stop her, before revealing that she is the first princess of the Verse Empire. On the outside, we find Slaine protecting our survivors in the sky while Inaho is looking out for him from below. They start making a plan to close in on the Orbital Knight since that would make all her weapons useless. Then the pilot descends while opening his backport so our MC can mount him to accomplish the forbidden fusion. Inaho rides Slaine towards the climax of this battle, however the Martian sends her master hands after the duo. But prior to getting fisted, the arm suddenly explodes as our MC explains that when the hands open they are vulnerable to most high-powered rounds along with the thrusters because it has almost no protection. Seeing that all her toys are being destroyed, the Orbital Knight transforms into a giant fister and blasts off into the sky to confront our heroes. Inaho tries to blow it off course, but it's too big for him to move, so Slaine is forced to stall the plane to avoid a trip to heaven, though this leaves them in a position where it's impossible to dodge again. The Martian declares herself the victor when she suddenly tanks a firework to the face as a barrage of people deleters starts heading her way. The Deucalion begins rising from the cliffside to enter the combat zone with Salem at the helm, who has activated the Aldnoah drive, which makes the Orbital Knight confused about how the Earthlings gained this technology before she decides to charge them head-on. but the king of backshots takes out her thrusters to leave the woman helpless on the ground so the battleship can give her the heaviest face-sitting session in the world. Ryet resolves to slide on all Martians to avenge her father as she picks up a Pure to follow the double-tap rule, while the rest of our survivors celebrate making it through another attack. In the sky, Slaine asks Inaho to take him to the princess, but our MC questions how he knew that she was still alive, which makes the pilot ponder if they are also trying to exploit Asylum for their own gain, and as tension rises, both of them decides to open fire on each other, with Inaho coming out the victor of the standoff, leaving Slaine to take a swim with the fishes. On the Deucalion, the commander learns the truth about what really happened to the princess and promises to protect her until they arrive at their main base where she can send a transmission to Mars, though she interrogates our party about why it was kept a secret and finds out that there could be people working with the assassins on board. Asylum along with Inaho leaves the audience room when his friend suddenly interrupts them to discuss the rumors of Martians on board, then announces his intentions to slide for his friend again, but after the princess apologizes to him on behalf of her people, it's proven that the Great Horny can even overcome the endless flames of vengeance. Our duo goes up on the deck where Inaho tells her about the pilot who saved all their lives, but he conveniently leaves out how that meeting ended, and Asylum shows him Slaine's good luck charm, then reveals that when they were kids he told many stories about how beautiful his home planet was, which made her dedicated to seeking peace between the two people so they can both benefit from a healthy relationship. At Count Criteo's fortress, we find that the pilot has been getting some shocking surprises as his tormentor asks why he went to the island and what led to the orbital night becoming past tense, but Slaine is the goat so he doesn't snitch. Criteo continues the shock therapy until Sazbom intervenes because if the captive breaks this will all be pointless, which provokes the Count into drawing his Pure to start deep-throating the prisoner with his pole. Then he threatens to show him something mind-blowing in the near future before leaving the poor bastard to suffer alone. A few tragic hours later, the Martians decide to try a different method of persuasion and start assaulting the young man relentlessly as Criteo watches his victim's pain in endless euphoric bliss. Eventually, our goat reaches his limit and accuses the Count of being a part of the Orbital Knight's conspiracy to use the princess's passing as an excuse to make war with Earth. However, the accusation enrages the Count to the point where he unfolds his people corrector and channels the memory of his ancestors to use plantation breathing form 1864. A soldier intrudes on the punishment to report that they found the Gundam that was lost 15 years ago without its Aldnoah drive, though the Count dismisses this since the humans have no way to activate it. Slaine suddenly starts laughing, so Criteo decides to end his suffering despite the protests of Sazbom, who abruptly ends his transmission. The Count questions why the pilot would be happy in a time like this, which leads him to the realization that without plot armor it is impossible for the Earthlings to defeat the Orbital Knight while not having an Aldnoah drive of their own, but the only way that would be possible is if the princess was still alive to activate it. Criteo kindly asks Slaine to confirm his suspicions, and with the last of his strength the goat tells them that Asylum will destroy all their plans when she arrives. Seeing that the pilot was ride or die for the princess all along, the Count cradles Slaine in his hand while begging for his forgiveness as the medics approach to treat the hero's injuries. Criteo contacts his command center to tell them to send a transmission to all Orbital Knights to cease hostilities against the people of Earth, but they notice that an object is traveling towards their fortress at high speeds. On the outside we find Sazbom and his Eva falling from the skies to crash into the castle. Criteo comes face to face with the true traitor and challenges him to an honorable duel with Gundams, but Sazbom simply lasers the fool, then retrieves Slaine's unconscious body from the ruins before blasting off into the sky to return to his fortress. On the Deucalion, Yuki monitors the new soldiers' progress as they're using virtual reality to improve their fighting skills when Ryet joins them to train so she can smoke even more Martians. The assassin's daughter enters the simulation and does better than anyone would suspect, which makes her request for Yuki to raise the difficulty, so Inaho's sister decides to give Ryet something familiar, but once the young lady is confronted by Baron Glizzyhead's Gundam, she begins having a full-blown panic attack until the mech goes offline. In the cafeteria, Ryet reminisces about what she lost as the princess arrives to join her for lunch. The assassin's daughter inquires about her clothing, and Salem describes the second worst trait in the history of humankind prior to two little ones coming over to give the princess a gift. Then Ryet wonders why she would reveal herself to everyone despite the risk before leaving to eat elsewhere. In the doctor's office, they are trying to use virtual reality to treat the teacher's PTSD. The test starts out with the patient managing the simulation well, but after the Martian shows up, he gets swept away in the memory, and we see that his entire unit was unprepared for this battle, so they were mercilessly slaughtered. The teacher's tank gets flipped into the air, though it seems that his team survived until his friend calls for help because his foot is stuck inside the vehicle, when a fire erupts that starts gradually cooking the men alive, and following the heart-wrenching screams of the commander's brother begging for the pain to end, the teacher uses a puer to put his soul at rest before escaping from the tank as it suddenly explodes. The victim of war freaks out from his visions and is disappointed in himself for failing again, which makes the doctor reveal that his trauma is not caused by the fighting but by the guilt he feels from smoking his friend, and ends the treatment for today. The psychologist then meets with the commander to give her the teacher's patient file so both of them can recover from the loss of their loved one together. Inside the bathroom, Ryet is having a mental breakdown because she doesn't understand why the princess seems happy after experiencing so many hardships, while it's hard for her to even make up reasons to go on living. But unexpectedly, the princess chooses the worst time possible to take a shower, and her maid leaves to get a change of clothes. Salem enjoys the hot water running down her curvaceous body when Ryet comes from behind and uses Slaine's good luck charm to give a royal neck massage until the princess gives up on fighting back. Then she allows the loot box to fall to the floor. The Aldnoah drive abruptly deactivates, which freaks out the command center and forces them to make a crash landing, though luckily nothing was damaged. Everyone realizes that something must have happened to the princess, so they rush to her location where she's found without a pulse, but Naho begins doing CPR in an attempt to resuscitate Salem. And after a few minutes of trying, the princess of the Verse Empire finally escapes the cold embrace of death. Our MC inquires into what happened as Ryet steals the commander's puer to persuade the doctor's party to leave the room immediately, and Naho questions what caused this to happen, and the confused woman confesses that she is a Martian who was sent to Earth alongside her father with the promise of nobility if they put the princess on a t-shirt. But after completing the mission, the orbital knight made her an orphan in order to keep his secret safe. Ryet admits to them that she has no one on Verse or this planet to care about anymore. However, when Salem revealed the truth, all the people accepted her and gave the princess a place among them, despite the fact that if she never came down to Earth, then no one would have suffered the effects of this war. Salem apologizes for bringing misery to this world and agrees that she is responsible for millions of people being sent to the Shadow Realm. While slowly walking towards her executioner, the princess falls to her knees to beg forgiveness from everyone for the hardships they now face, but Ryet can't bring forth the courage to take Salem's life again, so she decides to give herself brain surgery instead. Naho Flash steps over to introduce the woman to the floor, where our MC declares that he doesn't care about which planet she came from since they have been fighting together all this time. Then 100 IQ Naho entrusts the mentally unstable lady with the lethal weapon, and thankfully the commander is there to take it back before ordering Yuki to put Ryet into custody. They take the princess to the doctor's office, who advises Salem to get some rest, though the captain comes for her anyway so she can reactivate the Aldnoah drive to get the ship back into the air. At Sasbaum's fortress, Argot awakens from sleep mode to find the Count by his side, who tells Slaine that Cruteo has been made into a hashtag and reveals that his father once helped him in the past, thus his actions were simply to repay an overdue favor. Then the Orbital Knight confesses to being the true traitor behind the conspiracy to put the princess on a t-shirt. At the dinner table, Slaine tries his best to convince Sasbaum to spare Salem's life, but it's unfeasible because her presence can undo all his carefully laid plans, which makes the pilot lunge at him with a body penetrator while questioning why he would go through this much effort just to construct a war. Count Sasbaum explains that when the first ruler was declared king of the Verse Empire, Mars was a planet that resembled Earth in nature. However, as time passed by, the thin atmosphere made the environment almost inhabitable. To remedy this, the second emperor chose to command all the greatest minds to make weapons far beyond human comprehension to rule over them with an iron fist, instead of coming up with ways to feed his people. And when all the citizens started to riot, the royal family began producing propaganda to blame Earth for all their problems. Soon after, the king made plans for an invasion using the Hypergate to place troops behind the moon, but he also sent an advanced unit down to Earth to scout the enemy's strength that consisted of himself along with his fiancée, where they suddenly got warnings of massive objects heading their way after the moon fragmented into many pieces. Sasbaum's betrothed gets trapped in the lava, so she begs him to abandon her, and with a heavy heart he left her behind before the island was blown to smithereens. The Count says it's the royal family who causes Mars to suffer by not taking Earth's resources and also sending his fiancée to her grave, but with this war he will correct all their mistakes while getting vengeance on their entire bloodline for what they took from him, before warning Slaine that even though his father once saved his life, anyone who stands in his way will be swiftly dispatched. On the Deucalion, the commander contacts the main base to signal their arrival prior to going underground to land the battleship into the port area. All our survivors begin to depart from the vessel, and seeing that it's finally safe, the students decide to step away from the fighting until they're called into action again. The first princess of the Verse Empire enters the conference room to start a transmission to Mars, where she reveals that it was traitors within the Orbital Knight who tried to assassinate her to get an excuse to plunder this planet. Then Asylum commands all her royal subjects to stop this war immediately and begin peace negotiations with Earth as soon as possible. At Sasbaum's fortress, Slaine is brought to Cruteo's Gundam, which is now useless since its Aldnoah drive deactivated when the Orbital Knight passed away. The Count discloses that they found the princess's location by following a broadcast the Earthlings sent to their moon base, but since his allies control all the communication systems, Asylum's cry for peace will remain unheard. Sasbaum releases our goat from his chains and gives him the choice of joining the planet where he was born or fighting for the Empire who raised him, before going into the command room to make his fortress descend and bring down a great calamity on the people of Earth. On the army's main base, they begin sounding the alarm to signal an incoming attack as Sasbaum knocks on their front door. The military tries a futile attempt at retaliation and the Count returns fire upon them, though his people, the leaders, penetrate deep into the ground to explode inside the enemy's soft spots. The Titan squad is deployed to fight anything that enters the hole, but when Sasbaum descends from the heavens, he begins handing out Michael Jackson concert tickets to all the soldiers who are present, before sending out his ground troops with the sole objective of ending the princess's subscription to life. Asylum sits in the ruins of her hopes and dreams while coming to the realization that words alone cannot stop this conflict, so she signals in Naho to reveal that to shut down the fortress they have to defeat the Orbital Knight or get her close enough to manually deactivate its Aldnoah drive. The commander prepares to launch the Deucalion, however they suddenly take heavy damage from the Martians' artillery units as the princess arrives on the scene to try and get on board. All the enemy soldiers start focusing their fire on Asylum, but Ryet comes in just in time to distract them long enough for Naho's friend to pull her inside the battleship so she can escape. The captain tries to contact the command tower, but after receiving no answer, she launches a barrage of boomers at the doors to create their own exit so they can make a temporary retreat into the atmosphere. Naho makes a plan to drop decoy robots from the sky to cover the main force that will land on the fortress with the goal of disabling all the turrets, which will allow the princess to descend safely to turn off the Aldnoah drive. Inside Sasbaum's fortress, the Martians receive a report of an overwhelming force rapidly approaching and fire off bombardments of anti-air missiles that wipe out the decoys, which release flares to disrupt their sensors. Then the Titan squad skydives into the combat zone to enact their plan. The student starts panicking, but a veteran gives her encouragement before being blasted into the Shadow Realm as all the turrets turn towards our allies to devastate their unit. but luckily Inaho's plot armor protects him from becoming a casualty, so he can close the distance to clear the way for a safe landing prior to unleashing all his boomers to capture the zone for the rest of the team. Our allies get ready to send down the princess to the drop site and opens the hatch to find Sazbom patiently waiting outside, who begins pounding the battleship with rockets until it slowly falls back to Earth. But the commander decides that she won't go out like a little bitch before ordering the helmsman to kamikaze the Deucalion into the Count's fortress in a desperate venture to do any damage they can. Yuki tries to contact the battleship and the teacher answers to inform everyone of his party's current state before giving them the responsibility of completing this mission. Inaho's sister enters the vessel where it's found that the princess somehow remained unharmed during the crash, so she throws her comrade's loot box on the floor, then takes his place to pilot the mech towards the Aldnoah drive. Salem awakens from sleep mode confused, though she quickly remembers what happened. She asks Yuki if there can ever be peace between their people after what they've done, and Inaho confesses that nations start wars all the time for many different reasons, which is why even after this one ends he won't detest any Martians just because of where they were born. But Sazbom intercepts the channel to say that he's their biggest hater who hates the way Earthlings walk, talk, and even dress, as he takes flight on the battlefield to block our allies' way. Inaho resolves to take on the Orbital Knight by himself while the rest of his unit escorts the princess to the Aldnoah drive. The Count commences the fight by calling his two Zords to come to his location so he can begin a fusion montage with all the parts of the Orbital Knight's Gundams that have been destroyed thus far to form a Walmart Voltron. Inaho pews his opponent, however the shield absorbs the projectiles, which gives Sazbom the chance to reveal his noble phantasm to strike down our protagonist, but Inaho passes the quick-time event. Then the Titan squad tries to help, though the Count nearly high-fives the poor bastards before fisting them into the afterlife. We see the pilot flying overhead to search for the princess, where he gets targeted by the Earthlings and is forced to land the sky carrier for the last time. Slaine raises his weapon at a Titan who commands him to surrender prior to the turrets putting an end to his life, as a Martian comes over to explain that enemy combatants have made their way inside the fortress. Our goat is confused since everyone knows that he is an Earthling, but the man says it doesn't matter where Slaine was born because anyone willing to point their weapon at the enemy is their ally before he's sent to Martian Jesus. The young man is forced to run away from the pursuing Earthlings all the way to the docking area, where he's compelled to enter Cruteo's Gundam for protection, but surprisingly Slaine is able to reactivate the Eva's Aldnoah drive because when the princess saved his life, she also unknowingly gave our goat the authority of an orbital knight. On another side of the fortress, Yuki is pinned down by the Martians on ending attacks, so Salem thinks of another route which leads to their objective that is too small to travel in with robots. Inaho's body abruptly breaks through the ceiling, with Sazbom following close behind to bring an end to their existence, and the Titan squad engages in a fruitless attempt to hold him off while RMC pleads with them to run away. The Count launches the Doom Fists to take out an unnamed character, which gives Inaho the chance to do massive damage to the Martian by targeting the gap within the barrier to destroy the remote control that signals his fisters. Then he blows up Sazbom's leg and puts the mighty Orbital Knight on his back before standing over him with a Purer so the Count can see the face of the one who bested him. The waifu party exits their Titan to take the princess down the route that the Aldnoah drive is being kept, so she can start the process of deactivating the fortress's power source, leaving RMC by himself to face off against the Orbital Knight, who refuses to stop fighting. Inaho tosses away his weapon to throw hands with Sazbom, and the Count charges at him, but RMC easily dodges the attack before going over to equip the Faparms 9000. The Martian continues the march forward to make Inaho a head shorter, but he gets a free tummy tuck in return that takes all the strength out of his knees, as Slaine arrives on the battlefield, though he's not sure whose side to take. RMC gets ready to give Sazbom a pounding that he will never forget. However, the Count swears he will end this cycle of hatred by wiping out all of Earth's population to give his people a chance to live in a land filled with clean air and water, while destroying the tyrants who fed the citizens lies to save themselves. After hearing this speech, Clutch God Slaine decides to save the Orbital Knight by tackling the two fighters into the room where the princess was turning off the Aldnoah drive. Our goat exits his Gundam to see the princess checking on Inaho to make sure he's alright when she suddenly gets an unexpected backshot prior to having her mind blown. Sassbomb thanks Slaine for saving him like his father did until our goat draws his Pure and just starts blasting up to the point where he runs out of ammo, so the Count has to show him where to aim his next shot. But before Slaine can end the Martian, he is distracted by Inaho's broken body desperately making his way towards the unmoving form of Asylum to see if she can be saved. The new Orbital Knight warns him about touching the princess as the two men meet each other for the first time in person. Then our MC draws a weapon and earns an extra hole in his head as a reward, leaving Slaine alone in the room surrounded by all the carnage this war has caused.
Like for a cat girl, subscribe for a waifu, and remember to stay swifty.
Ooh.